Bergen National Opera leads the national network of opera houses outside Oslo to develop new work and new competence in opera. And as a group we're called Ad Opera. And this, for the last 3 days, we've been developing new opera for children. That was the focus, with composers and librettists from Sweden, Norway and Denmark. Jonathan, it was very important to have you here because of your enormous global expertise in terms of having written so many successful works for children and for young people. What do you think about developing opera in general through workshops as opposed to the composer in their ivory tower writing an opera? Do you think that that workshop process is really valuable?
I think time will tell with these projects. I think it was very useful for these three composer-writer teams to see the fragments of the work that they produced so far, minimally staged. It would complete the process if there had been an audience of children, and if this was happening again, I would strongly recommend particularly Norwegian children. I've been trying to imagine myself as a child watching these pieces and think, well, would I be bored? Would I start eating sweets? Or would I be completely held by the story? And it's hard for me to be absolutely certain because I don't speak the languages, but I can certainly feel a musical presence, and so I think these are all pieces that have certainly got the power to communicate. But a whole new thing happens as I have had the painful experience of watching 500 8 to 12-year-olds watching an opera of mine, and it being very visible the moment at which they lost interest in what was going on. I think probably the composers and writers have been imagining different ages that they were appealing to, but I don't think they've all necessarily agreed on exactly what age they were imagining. One, I think in some ways, the most demanding for the audience was one that was imagined for teenagers. And I would love to see that with that age group. I really can't tell. This is a story which appears to be happening in the mind of the girl. So she is hearing the voice of the mother. She is hearing the voice of the prince, who appears to her first of all in the form of a bear. But it's really her kind of her inner journey, and it seemed to me to be very intense and also very beautiful. There was a very strong atmosphere in the room while that was being performed. I'd love to know whether that would appeal as much to teenage boys as to teenage girls. I'd be fascinated just to see what that would look like.
One of the things I found really interesting was that we didn't have a situation where we were just listening to singers singing text. There was a mixture of spoken text, but also there were quite a lot of sounds, hissing and breathing and these kind of things. Do you think that that expanded sound world, so to speak, is a critical thing in writing opera for young people?
It's not something I personally have explored a lot myself, but I found it very vivid. The second piece that we saw today began with the psst, 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 and then there were tape sounds, and there was even the sound of one of the singers doing overtone singing, creating this kind of magical, luminous haze behind his own voice. I think children are exposed to so many different kinds of storytelling through image and sound, and their experience from film and television makes them very comfortable, I think, with a huge array of both musical idioms and extended sound vocabulary.
You see, the other thing that I find, everything happens at such speed now, computer games, even television drama. And what was noticeable with all three of the pieces we heard was that they were very slowly paced. They were quite slow paced, they were quite dreamy, as you say. Two of them in fact, were sort of exploring the inner workings of the mind, so to speak. Do you think that children can accept, can slow their own breathing even, to listen to music which has that sort of mesmeric feel, rather than it having to be fast-paced?
I think it depends very much on the situation in which the music is happening. I think, as I discovered to my cost, if the situation itself is not engaging the children, and the music is slow and quiet, you have chaos. The children go mad. But I also had the experience from my own work of seeing if there's a mystery, and so a group of children entering a labyrinth, what's in there, where's the monster? The music can be very slow for quite a long time, but you're still waiting for that moment when maybe the monster's going to appear. And I think at that point the children are very still. In the second opera we watched today, in Philomena, I think it's probably on the edge of dangerous, the timing of the sirens making it a very, very seductive sound. I have a suspicion, and from what you've said, that probably Norwegian children are better behaved than British ones, and so they may sit perfectly patiently. They maybe start to wonder if something's going to happen soon. But I think the situation is interesting because you have sirens approaching the central character, and you can't tell straight away if they have good intentions or bad intentions. It sounds very seductive, it sounds very beautiful, but there's something in the way that they're moving that makes you think maybe this scene isn't going to end well. And so I think that could well hold the children for much of the time. But I wouldn't be surprised if this piece is fully developed, that during the first performances the composer may find that he will want to tighten it up a bit. I did describe to the composers what I call the Malteser moment, which is the point at which children get restless and start dropping these little round chocolate-covered sweets which roll quite noisily down, bounce down the steps of the opera house, and then ricochet off the front of the orchestra pit.
It's a bad sign, rattle. For sure.
So the Malteser moment is the thing to avoid.
The other thing is that the whole issue about, children listen to a great deal of popular music and completely different kind of voices. It's this issue of introducing children to the operatic voice as well, which is must be in some ways a challenge for a composer writing for this age group.
Yes, and children react quite differently. That sometimes some find it very exciting, and particularly they're often experiencing an opera singer close up in a chamber work like the ones that we are exploring here. And that's incredibly exciting to hear this very powerful sound that requires no amplification. But it is alien as well, and I've seen children just cover their ears because it's alarming and weird. I think from that point of view, again, Philomena would probably be very successful because it starts very low in the voice for everyone, so there's nothing that really sounds operatic. It doesn't become extreme until further into the piece, so it kind of creeps up on the listener, which is a trick that I've used myself, so that the audience gets comfortable before you hit them with the high notes. I think that's probably what I would say about that.
Yeah. And just lastly, what are you working on yourself right now? Are you writing an opera for children just now?
No, I've just finished several works for children in a row. One of which was a large-scale community opera called The Monster in the Maze.
Which we hope we will be doing in Bergen very soon.
I hope so too. Which was for, there were 300 people on stage, I think, the last time it was done. I also have just written a brief history of creation for a children's chorus and symphony orchestra. And a series of songs to be sung around the country in England later in the year. So, in fact, my next opera is a grown-up one, which is a comedy about Karl Marx.
I can't wait. Commissioned, I gather, in Germany too, which is all the more extraordinary.
For Bonn. Yeah.
Splendid. We look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.